The Pusher Pass podcast is not meant for younger listeners. This is a mature podcast. We use salty language. You have been warned.
Today on the show, we're going to cover our thoughts on the Exile models. We all played them last week. Harriet, Decimate, and Minx. How'd they do? We are also going to be covering our thoughts on the new Falconers, and we want to go on and see how they're going to work together and with the Hunters. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pusher Pass podcast. Thank you for joining us on this gloriously warm day here at our house. As always, I am Dave. Sitting to my left,
I'm Jesse.
and joining us in the third seat today, we have our good friend and local Guild Ball enthusiast.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris.
Chris is our local pundit and the guy who basically helped kickstart the community back in the Northern Ohio area for our local store. And we brought him on today to discuss a lot of the new Guild Ball items, considering the fact that the Falconers are 100% spoiled. So we wanted to have him on today to go over everything and see how well we think they're going to impact everything. So today is going to be a fairly Guild Ball heavy day. If you came here for HeroClix,
You are sadly mistaken.
yeah, we'll make a note of that in the show notes. But we're definitely going to have some more next week. There's some new stuff coming out for the Turtles, and hopefully there'll be some more news about convention stuff in the coming weeks. But this week, we're going over Guild Ball stuff. So, the Exiles did come out, and we got them at our store, and we played them all last week.
I think each of us played one.
I definitely did. I played Harriet. Jesse, who'd you play?
I played Decimate.
And Chris, who'd you play?
I played Veteran Minx in the Hunters.
So, how did we all feel that they worked? Jesse, how well did Veteran Decimate rip the other opponent apart?
Oh, I love me some Vet Decimate. She was so good. Oh, she was just like, I'm just going to take out things standing in my way. I'm going to reposition everything. I played against a team of blacksmiths who had Cranky Grandma standing in the way with all her weapons. And she was just like, no, you're going over this way. Knocked her out of the buff zone for Alloy, which is always a good thing to do.
So she had a pretty good showing. Did you found her to be pretty useful?
Oh, she's so useful. I am actively excited to play Brewers now because she makes the team playable.
I mean, the Brewers were never the worst team in Guild Ball. Like, maybe they were for a moment, but I mean, the Brewers always had a chance.
For a moment, or 13 months.
13 months. I mean, probably. The thing about the Brewers that I've noticed is that they really lack like that one more piece to go in and fight somebody, because once Tapper and for the most part Hooper go in and fight, they're pretty much donezo. But she really fills a big slot that I think that they didn't have for a long time, especially a model with reach and that kind of speed. Because generally they if you don't talk about Spigot's heroic, they're fairly slow
For the most part.
until they're not. But I mean, Decimate being a 6'8" with a 2-inch reach, with the fact that she also has acrobatic, which
Another 2-inch move.
yeah, she was.
Yeah, viable dodges are always a help for models with long threat ranges.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty huge. We definitely wanted to look at that because she's got a lot of points to her, and she can move people all over the place. Momentous results. She still retained anatomical, and she gained tough hide. And she has a heroic play where she can dodge towards the target of the attack when she needs to. She's got pretty much all the tools Brewers ever wanted. So it's really interesting that they brought her in. She did lose a point of defense, so she's not as safe as she was being a 4-1, but
She's got that tough hide now, so she soaks up like a hit.
yeah.
Well, there's a lot of models that if she ends within a certain range of them, those models can really mess her up. But so long as the player who's running Decimate is smart about it, it's easy to prevent that. For instance, I keep thinking about, my main team is engineers. If a Brewers player plays Veteran Decimate into my engineers, Ballista can kill her when she's got If she has 10 hit points or less, Ballista can one-round her and do it pretty reliably by knocking her down with a deadbolt and coming in and pounding on her face. I'm sure that's true of a lot of other models in the game, but that stands out. Now, if you can't knock her down, there's a good chance that she'll push you away or get away. But if you can knock Decimate down, you can deal with her pretty handily.
Yeah, she seems to be the thing that the Brewers were missing. A good reach model that can carry the ball even a little bit. I mean, because she's got a pretty decent tackle and she can get away. Her counterattack is fantastic, having at least a push on one and a double push on two. Seems pretty good. So she really much fits all the roles. As I've talked to like at least one other guy who plays Brewers up at the shop, he basically said, there's never not a reason to include her going forward forever, as long as she doesn't really change and the major ways the Brewers work don't change. Like he said, I cannot think of a situation where I would not take her at all. Do we agree with that?
I agree with that until we get the Season 4 retool. We'll see what happens.
Season 4 retool incoming, apparently right around the Gen Con, between Gen Con and SteamCon US is where we're going to really find out about it, because we're going to get some previews at Gen Con, which is August 5th. So not too far away. Really makes you wonder what they're doing with the models, if they are going to be predetermined for the new season, or if they will, or if they're just coming as they are and we're going to see a major overhaul. For all we know, she might actually even get toned down in the overhaul in season 4. But I mean, not that there's really much to tone down. I mean, she's just good, but I mean, we'll see what happens in season 4.
She's real good in a team of models that are just about there. They all have stuff that they do pretty well, and she just kind of turns it up just a little bit more.
Chris, you've seen Veteran Decimate now for a while, and you've gotten a chance to look at her. I mean, do you think this turns the table for them, or how do you think this works for them? Yeah.
Well, it certainly adds a lot of tools that they didn't have before. And now, I don't think any team in this game is kind of autopilot to victory. That's just something that doesn't happen in this game. But I also think that teams that are on the... I think that there's not a large variance in ability to achieve success between teams towards the bottom end and teams towards the top end. But I think that with a model like Decimate, it certainly tightens up a lot of the Brewers' issues. And so long as they can keep her alive and put her where they need her, that player is going to, that human who is playing that team is going to have a lot of success with her.
For the most part, it seems to me that like your standard lineup with her is with the Brewers is going to be, if you're taking her for just the straight fight, Tapper, a mascot of some kind, Hooper, Spigot, Decimate, Friday, whoever else you want. I mean,
if you're taking Tapper, you should probably take Scum as the mascot, because they go very well together and Scum will rip someone's face off.
Yeah, but I mean, that seems like a pretty standard build for what you're going to be taking in the future.
Yeah, but she also adds a lot of flexibility because she's both so fast. Well, not just both. She's incredibly fast. She's great at setting up models. She's great at damaging models. She's great at pushing models around. She's great at scoring. So with her, it opens up a lot of play styles for that team. It's, of course, the classic old beater team starts with Tapper and Hooper and just starts pasting everybody with the long sticks. But she lets you get muscle in whatever team you should assemble.
The other thing that I've noticed when I was reading her is I realized that I'm like, oh, is there any way to get extra damage on her? And I realized there was. Esther's has +1 damage, and when you look at that onto Decimate's playbook, +1 damage on that gives her a non-momentous 3 and a push on 2, and a momentous 4 on 4 with anatomical precision and 6 dice. That's a reasonable possible get. I mean, even with +1 damage, she's doing 2 damage on a single hit.
Right, and it's very frequent that she can have +2 damage because Spigot has tooled up, Tapper has commanding aura, So it is possible to give her +2 damage if you really want to load her up in the Voltron style. And she's often going to wrap and just be really smacking people hard. But again, like her easiest takeout option is if an enemy model is within 8 inches of a board edge, she can pretty easily push them off.
Shove, 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 shove.
Yeah, just double pushes on 2 forever. It might be a little disconcerting. I really am excited to play with her and against her because I want to see what I can get done and what she gets done on the board.
Yeah, it really. I mean, the push across the board is really almost a guarantee, because with Duelist Lunge, every attack she can make a 2-inch dodge towards the model. She can follow up essentially for free and never have to worry about a counterattack, because you can choose to push them away and then dodge up. And with Acrobatics, she can even get around to where she needs to be more, especially if they're already on their butt, which she theoretically could put down if she gets a wrap off somehow, which could happen considering she's tax 6 on a 5 playbook with Anatomical. I mean, it's not unheard of. She just seems like the best thing ever. And I can't see a reason why any Brewers player ever would shake a stick at that, pun included. So, Chris, you played Minx. How did Minx do for you? We've played her a little bit before this night, but you got some use out of her. So how did you feel about that?
So, Veteran Minx is pretty interesting. I think she's very potent. In the game that I played with her, I did not get much out of her, and it's mostly because I was getting so much out of the rest of my team, and sometimes that just happens. Now, in terms of what makes her great for the team, she's got an exceptional speed. She's got a good tackle, tackles on 2 hits, which with a 2-inch melee, which you can't say about. It's rare that there's a good tackle in Hunters on a 2-inch melee. I think Vet Hearn has a tackle on 2 with 2-inch melee, but Vet Minx, I find her to be a great kickoff model. She's great for threatening the kickoff model, because if your opponent kicks off with a very fast model, you can in turn just charge that model with Minx, who's got a native 11-inch threat range. Just charge their kickoff model, and unless they activate that model next, your other hunters can often kill that model, just swarm in due to her marked for death. Because once she gets marked for death up, anything in her melee zone costs 1 less to charge, and friendly models get extra range when charging it. Yeah, plus 2 inches when charging it. So suddenly J-Car is charging for with a 12-inch threat range, and it costs 1 to do that charge, and it's just nuts. Minx herself, even when she's not getting a lot of work done, she's still great because she's very resilient. She's a 4-1 model that ends up being 5-1 against models that aren't at full health. And 5-1 models are an incredible headache to deal with. Like, all the things you think about what one of your models can get done, all bets are off once it's a 5-1 model. You have to really sit down and think about which of your playbook results you're likely to get into a 5-1 model. So she's very good for threatening long distances and engaging an enemy model and forcing them to activate that model or die. So you get a lot of activation control.
5-1 seems like a pain in the ass.
Yes. Even though I got very little done with Minx, my opponent was raging at that 5-1. When he activated the model and to go into Minx, I said, don't expect as much as you are normally getting out of that model. And yeah, they just did not get much done to her. I think after 2 turns, they managed to kill Minx, but I decided to use my momentum elsewhere for Blessing of the Sunfather, which, by golly, she has 2. Oh, I love Blessing of the Sunfather. You can leverage that into so many good results. So much utility for blessing your other models. In that game, I had taken Matagi with her, so I was often blessing him for a free Harrier AoE. If Minx is threatening an enemy model in a way that the opponent has to activate that model or it dies, then Matagi can follow up and place a Harrier AoE down on a model that has already activated, and if that model can't get out of that Harrier AoE, it then dies. Furthermore, I was able to sometimes leverage a pinned from Theron to lock somebody in a Harry or AoE and kill them. It was just, yeah, my opponent was in knots over, just their team couldn't get anywhere. And when they could, I would just pick out and kill the models. I really think that between Vet Minx and Matagi and Minerva all joining the Hunters, it just turns them up to 11, potentially 11 and a half. I'm not really sure, but somewhere in there. And I'd really, I'm excited to play them over the next couple months to really get a feel for where they are now. Because when I first started playing, I used the Hunters exclusively, and then I jumped over to Engineers once I got my Engineers painted, and that was like, you take off the weighted clothes and train normal style for once, and it was just kind of glorious. So, I don't know, what have you guys noticed about Veteran Minx, and have you gotten anything out of her?
I've played her in a couple of games before she came out. We were proxying her back in a couple of matches, and I noticed that she has a pretty decent counterattack. If they don't have a 2-inch melee, they can push out, because if they don't base her, then she can push away.
Yeah, and often she's 5-1 with a good counterattack. 6-1 with a defensive stance. It's nuts.
It's pretty solid. The only thing that I'm super sad about is that her original version had Furious, so it could do what it needed to do on the first turn and not take up a ton of your resources. But with this Minx being a setup piece, I understand it better. Her Marked for Death comes in more than I had thought it would. Some people forget that it's there, and they don't realize exactly what it's doing. They're like, oh, it's just +2 move. No, it's 1 less charge. Means you're getting more attacks in.
Yes, she essentially, becoming a veteran, she essentially spreads the Furious to her friends. Like, you charge for a little less and you charge for a little less. You're both half Furious.
Yeah, the more teeth character play, not terrible. I didn't mind putting down jawbone markers. Free damage is free damage. It did put one person into a play one time where they were like, well, this model has a hit point left, and if I move it at all, it dies.
Yes, I didn't bring up the jawbone traps, but they are quite good. You can get creative with them. You can find lots of utility out of them. Furthermore, they're great for protecting her because, once a model walks through that jawbone trap, they're taking damage, and now she's a 5-1. So even if they came in to hit her fresh, they take damage. And now she's a 5-1, and she's so much more difficult to deal with. And if you get it just right, if they have more than 5 points of damage on them, when they get to her, they can never heal fully. So they're always dealing with her as a 5-1 rather than a 4-1. It's wonderful.
For only having 12 health, she's deceptively difficult to kill, simply because unless you can get her on her 4-1 status by having no damage on you and then knocking her on her ass, she's going to be rather difficult to kill. There's a million ways to make you fall down, and there's armor stripping abilities, but just on her base size, she's going to be a rough person to deal with.
And she's also kind of a great ball control piece. Like, she can hold on to the ball with a 5-1. Like, it's pretty difficult for a lot of models to tackle the ball away at that. Furthermore, she's good at getting around and picking a pocket and sometimes scoring. Because she's got the long, the 7-9 speed and the 2-inch melee and a 3-6 kick, which isn't bad. It's reasonably accurate, so that gives her, a 15-inch threat range on goal?
Yeah.
That's nothing to sneeze at, and that certainly helps the Hunter's case, because they don't have a lot of high-accuracy, long threat range models.
No, the only one that has, I think, a long kick like that is, I believe Egret has a 8-inch kick.
Yeah, Egret's got an 8-inch kick. I would more compare her in utility to, when I play Hunters, actually, my biggest scorer is Jakar, just because he gets around everywhere and often can set up a tap-in by stabbing someone in the face and dodging and getting in good position and then hitting a goal and then back to the shadows and then re-engaging somebody or getting away. He gets a lot of mileage out of things like that. So she can pull similar tricks, and it's nice to have that. I never in my team take a devoted goal scorer. I usually have people that can mix it up and each contribute in different ways. And in this game, I think that overall threat range on goal is far more important than number of dice or distance of kick, because anybody who's fast can get in tap and range, and then it's much more automatic.
Okay. Do you think that she automatically is included in the team now that she's a part of it?
Well, I'm not usually one to go with auto includes. So, no, not, and particularly not in the current iteration of the Hunters. Prior to the Falconer models coming out and being added to the Hunters, I would have said that yes, she goes in pretty much every lineup I can think of that wants to produce good results. But you can always find good things to do without her. But now that the Falconer models are available for the Hunters, I really think that you'll find more times where you leave her on the bench than... I think she still goes in the majority of lineups for me, but I can conceive a lot of times where I won't want her.
Do you think she plays better with Theron or with Skesa?
Oh, that's, I'm a little guilty here. I've actually never put Scatha on the board. I've played against Scatha a lot of times. It's hard for me to say. I think that she's great with both of them, but I do think she helps Scatha more than she helps Theron. Although, Theron being able to charge somebody for one influence is detrimental to that model's health. Whereas, Scatha doesn't get that so much in that way, but it's a way to bring a good tackling, fast model into a Scatha team and have another source of blessing of the Sunfather. So now Scatha can get blessed by Minx, and if you do that, I don't know, that sounds like some kind of win condition that you're pushing. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but that sounds very good. But again, I don't have a lot of experience with Scatha. I've seen her across the board a lot, and I expect whenever Scatha is on the board, I think that's a situation where whenever Scatha is on the board, you better take Veteran Minx with her. I really think they go extremely well together. It's easier for me to see using Veteran Minx less in a Theron lineup than in a Scatha lineup, but people's mileages vary, and you'll see lots of creative differences, but that's my opinion on the matter. Yeah, it's really an exciting time to be a Guild Ball player, I think. There's just so much cool stuff coming out that there's a lot of catching up and reinventing to do right now.
There is, and with all the minor guilds and stuff coming out, it leaves a lot of just new possibilities to explore.
Yeah, there's a lot to do with all the factions now once they get all of their minor guilds. I mean, some are going to get them faster than others, but, it's no longer, oh, I want something new to do. Maybe I'll grab the Masons. Maybe I'll grab a starter box and get the Masons. Or, oh, maybe the Butchers look cool. I really want a fight team. Well, now you have another guild that you can play exclusive to your faction that can play up and down. So it's definitely giving you a lot more options to do. You don't have to get directly into a new faction. You can just buy more guys for your guild, and you have a lot more depth, I should say. You're not generally changing the play style. I don't think, as far as I can tell, none of the minor guilds are going to change the play styles of what their probably parent guild is, but it definitely gives you some different options. The Falconers and the Hunters are, while both having a very killy option, do not change the game entirely for the Hunters. They still want to kill people. They still want to gang up and kill people. Whereas, it's not like the Butchers all of a sudden get a minor guild that's all about kicking.
Right. I am curious about what will happen with the Butchers, and my money is that they will get that their minor guild will be showing up immediately after the Navigators, just because there was that whole not quite Kickstarter that happened or rather didn't quite happen. And, the sculpts are already done for Resin Butchers as well as the Resin Fishermen. So I think that's probably in line afterward, but we'll see.
Yeah, with that, they already have a lot coming out, but we'll see. They seem like they're going to be on an every 3 or 4 month cycle with. We'll see what happens with them. Let's see what else.
So, Dave, you played Harriet.
I did play Harriet.
How did Harriet do?
Well, I can tell you right now that I played our good friend Henry when I played Harriet. He plays Morticians, but he also has Ratcatchers now, because of course they're their minor guild. I played Harriet into Ratcatchers. I played Pinvice and with her because I thought it would be neat to have a lot of strikery guys that can also fight. Because Harriet herself is not the most strikery, but she can be pretty mobile with her speed. Harriet got a lot of work done. She isn't the workhorse that old Harry is for just pure damage and wander into the middle of the board and fight some people. But she has a lot going on for her that I took advantage of. I will say right now that Ratcatchers are frustrating as hell, and F those guys.
They are super frustrating.
Well, they're really weird, and I can tell you right now that Piper is dumb. Piper is so dumb. Piper is so dumb. Yeah, Piper, all I can say is for any people who are even thinking about playing Ratcatchers, don't let him die. Because he does everything.
I'll say about Harriet for the moment. I've used her a couple of times. And, when her stats first were announced, there was a lot of predictions about what she could do with kind of a ridiculous Mondo combo of tooling up Hoist and putting a bunch of buffs on Hoist and having Hoist grab her Mechano Fist character play. What's it called? Sucker Punch? Yeah,
Sucker Punch.
Yeah. Grab that and just go to town on a model, but actually be hitting a model that's 6 inches away from there and doing 4 damage a punch. And I really don't see that being her main usage. Harriet, to me, gets a lot of work done by her free character play means that with 0 influence on her, she can wander up. She can wander up to 10 inches away from Ballista and 6 inches from that point do a sucker punch at somebody and potentially strip the ball at range. So between she and Ballista, they create this giant oval of no loitering for ball carriers. So if a ball carrier stands there, even with classical things that help you hold on to the ball like close control or unpredictable movement, she'll just slap the ball away with sucker punch, and then one of your other models might be able to recover it, or maybe she can if she's close enough to that model and kick it away and really change the tempo of the game when she does that. I haven't had her do too much other than that. I think that she's the kind of model where if you try to force something with her, it's not going to come out well. She's a target of she's there for taking out targets of opportunity and applying to good opportunities, but not for forcing on things. Now, if you're trying to do the Ballista kind of range gun line thing, she does add like a free character play at range, which will do, 2 damage if it hits and generate a momentum with Momentous Inspiration. That sounds so great for spending 0 other than a spot on the board for her. Now, I'm still trying to figure out where she fits in with Pinvice, which it sounds like that's what you did last week, Dave. But that's how I've seen her.
I used her. I definitely didn't take my standard lineup. Hoist was not in the lineup. I took him out for favor of her, and who else did I play? I played Pinvice, Mother, the only mascot I own. I played Colossus. I played Ratchet. I played Locus, because Locus is the best. And then I played Harriet. My goal was, since I know Ratcatchers are a kicky team, it's pretty much the way I played Pinvice the other times I've played her, is not to overextend her. It's to let the other player come into me and set up a little bit of a kill box. And that way, eventually, once I've gotten through beating up on a bunch of guys, somebody will happen to get a goal. You can set yourself up for a good solution where you can get a kickback and then get another goal on the next guy coming across the board. Harriet, she's very fast. She's got her 4-6 kick like everybody else, so she's great for passing it down the line. The one thing about her that is great is you get that inspiring hat back, which, goddamn, is that aura great.
Yeah, I had really missed that. I hadn't put any version of Harry on the table in about a year. Once I had her back on the board with that inspiring hat, it just opened up so much on the first turn when I was receiving. It was a feeling that I had forgotten how nice it is.
Yeah, the good thing about the Inspiring Hat is that you can pretty much only give her one influence on the turn, but she can do so much more for the game because she can pick up the ball, take the ball, pass it around, and she will give so much more freedom to the team because she can dodge away back towards safety or move a guy up. She could potentially move Ballista into range because she could pass the ball to him at 6 inches. He dodges forward up the board so he can not have to hustle up there, or he can get a super long deadbolt on, or he can even do a super long goal threat. Because with his goal threat of 18, he can do 22 total, which I believe is enough to clear it from the center.
Yeah, that's correct. It's 20 inches from the deployment line to the goal, straight on.
So if you deploy Ballista in the center and she retrieves the ball and Ballista goes directly forward, Ballista with his feet can get a goal turn 1.
Yes.
Which is pretty silly because there might be a guy in the way, but he doesn't care, and then they fall over.
Now, it's my personal taste to try to hold that legendary for a later turn, but sometimes it's definitely worth using his legendary turn 1 to score a goal.
So I used her as more of a bait piece. I had her kind of in the middle. She was up in the front, whereas a lot of my models were. I mean, Colossus was up there, Locust was up there because they're just annoying to fight, but Ratchet's hiding in the background. Mother wasn't really up there, and Pinvice was kind of behind the lines because she can kind of go wherever she needs to go. She's so fast. So there was a lot of bait and switch on which model was where, and I was able to keep her healed every turn, even though there was all that garbage of the disease mechanic going on. But Ratchet really helped with that. I mean, I got to use his disease removal every turn.
Yeah, Fixer is a wonderful thing when you've got Mechanica all over the place.
And especially when you need the extra momentum to heal stuff, Ratchet's overclocked for a free charge, which, I mean, every time I gave away that free charge, it would get me back an extra momentum than I spent. It would get me 2 instead of 1, so I definitely appreciated it. I just think that her overall, she brings with her, you can dodge a wrench ability and the free character play. You can give her 0, and she can move. She has a 14-inch dislodge the ball aura, and with 1, she can run and then have a 17-inch dislodge the ball aura, or she can at the very least trigger close control for when Velocity or Colossus are coming in on the ball. And that seems really good because the worst part about trying to get at some strikers, especially the ones that have close control, is that you have to do it twice. And with her ability to do it for free on people who really try to come in the front door, they have to get past her, which means that they can't even try to come up the board until she's activated because she will make the ball fall out of the hands. I mean, it'll scatter somewhere, and chances are good somebody can recover it and at least place it next to the kicker, but it's going to make them waste time because, God forbid, it scatters and then they pick it up and they scatter it again. I mean, she can do a lot. And one of the thoughts that I had with, the dislodge effect is if it scatters to a terrible position and they don't have a way to pick it up quickly, with, the lesser used guys such as Salvo and Locust, they can retrieve the ball from farther down the field and get it back. Because with Tetherball and Locust's Meccano hand, where he just magnetos it back to himself or down the board, they can, if they don't get the ball again, they can inevitably lose it if they don't act quickly.
Right. And Salvo and Locust are models that I've rarely put on the table. In fact, I don't think I've ever put Locust on the table.
Do you even own Locust?
I do own Locust. I'm working on painting him, which should be really fast because he's wood. But hey, now with Harriet, she's a model that I can see playing in a lot of lineups. It's going to be very heavily dependent on what my opponent is playing. I don't think she goes in every lineup. I don't think she goes in most lineups, but I think she is incredibly good in the mirror match where you're going to be facing down a lot of close control. I think she's very good into the fisherman, for the same reason, being able to strip the ball off Corsair. The same thing with Blacksmith. She's going to be good in Blacksmiths if they're trying to stash the ball on a low defense model, or like Iron or Ferrite or somebody that's not near the if they're trying to stash it somewhere and hold it in the back, she's going to knock it loose and you might be able to recover, and that's a very nice thing.
Yeah, the other nice thing is, like, her playbook isn't nearly as threatening as Old Harry's was, especially even after the nerf. Like, she doesn't do nearly the enemy repositioning as Harry does with all the pushes and whatnot, but she has the momentum in all the right places. She has a way to trigger a knockdown. She has a push dodge, momentous tackle, which most people on the Engineers do have, which is fantastic.
Yeah, momentous tackles and momentous push dodge are just so choice.
And, you know, worst comes to worst, if you are in the worst situation, she can become tooled up and have momentous 3-on-2, which, yes, I will take that.
Right, it's good to have that as a secondary option. In your typical Engineers lineup, you don't have a lot of beater models, and it's good to have a secondary / tertiary model that can be used for that purpose.
Yeah, she's got 5 tack with 2 damage on the 2. On average dice, you're probably getting there. You can definitely do the old regular decimate trick of, I'm going to apply 8 damage with her. Yeah, she can still, if she's within the captain's range, she'll do 6 normally and then 2 with Sucker Punch. So she can apply a lot to the face.
Yeah, it's a nice little bonus. I do like that they filled her playbook with with some more dodges than Old Harry had, because, you know, Old Harry was a big man with a big wrench, and this is a little middle school gal. And it wouldn't really make so much sense if she could push everybody around the board.
Just stood there and redirected traffic with her non-existent wrench.
She has a wrench.
She has a wrench.
She has a mechano arm, but they didn't give her Mechanica.
Yeah, I was a little sad about that, although in retrospect, it would have been super icing on the cake. So
yeah, there's no downside for Mechanica, and if you could overclock Fixer her automatically, I mean, you can still do that in Pinvice's army, but you still don't get it automatically because let me tell you what, Ratchet, talk about an auto-include model. Ratchet is always in my team, and he never does nothing. He always does something, and it's always great, and it's never him who does it directly.
Yeah, and you speak of Pinvice. When I do look at her potential with Pinvice, so if Pinvice spends the momentum for Mechanical Heart and makes Harriet a Mechanica, then she's also a beneficiary of Pinvice's legendary play. So she'll get an oil token, and she's got a 4/6 kick like most Engineer Mechanica do, so she's going to be really useful in moving the ball around under that legendary play and being another reliable model to kick the ball to and call the ball back and bounce around. So lots of really crazy stuff you can get out of her in that case. So I do think that her being innately Mechanica would have just been over the top.
Yeah,
so
especially
it's fine.
Especially with her ability to give Inspiring Hat, like gaining all that momentum while not
so good.
Not spending it. I mean,
yes.
That, yeah, imagine that bullshit scenario happening. I mean, that's pretty great. No, I had it happen to me.
No.
There's a video about how I got bullshitted on at a tournament by Pinvice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a video about that.
There is.
Yeah, it's great. It's how to get deleted by Pinvice.
Yeah.
And she didn't delete. She used a legendary to score an unthinkably impossible goal. That's the thing about Pinvice, is her legendary doesn't always do something, but usually it lets you do something that should be nigh impossible.
Yeah, I know, because I was going to maybe win the next turn, and then I didn't. And then there was no next turn. Yeah, I got deleted. I was, nope, you're done. Screw you, buddy.
Hey, everybody, it's Jesse here. Quick break in the show. We decided that instead of having our detailed breakdown of the rat catchers here, we were going to put it up on YouTube just so we can save a little bit of space on the show. So we will post it out when it is available. And thanks for listening.
There definitely is a new faction out that's been completely spoiled. Not out in the actual release but we now know what every Falconers model does. And speaking of the Falconers, I haven't tried or proxied any of them, but I know Chris has, and I've looked at all the models and I went, this team might be more killy than J-Car.
I think that, as I mentioned earlier, the Falconer additions to the Hunters, that's Matagi and
Minerva.
Matagi and Minerva, the additions to the Hunters, they crank the Hunters' power way up. So, like I said, they take the Hunters and turn them to 11, maybe 12. I think Falconers are, you take that Hunter team and turn it back down to 7, 8, in overall terms of what they can get done and how they control the board. They're not quite as potent as the Hunters, but they play in a similar way. I've been really enjoying thinking about what the Falconers will do. Another set of models that I'm super excited to get on the table at some point.
Are you telling me that you don't want to play Super Stab Man with Harriers aplenty on him?
Now, which Super Stab Man do you mean? Because last time I checked, J-Car has 2 swords and 2 knives, whereas Super Stab Man Rundas for the Falconers has a piddly 2 knives. But they're both, I'm excited to, he's going to shank people in the face.
I mean, he's got a lot of damage potential. With Harrier, he can get a lot of work done. I mean, he doesn't have the trap that J-Car has, the pitfall, but he has the ability to do with a Harrier up. He has Momentous 3 on 2. He has non-momentous 5 on 5.
With a Harrier on the board.
With a Harrier on the board. I mean, it's in the fact that he's got he's pretty mobile because he has Shadow Likes. His engage is 6'8 plus 2, 10. So he's got an 11-inch threat range.
Yeah, so he out-threats J-Car. It's kind of interesting. I think they sort of took J-Car as a model for Super Stab Man and said, what if we make him a little more aggressive, get rid of anatomical precision, but shorten his playbook, because he's tack 6 with a 5-long playbook.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on in his playbook. I mean, he can push dodge, he can knock down, which actually, as far as I remember, J-Car doesn't have a knockdown.
He does not. Both Rundas and J-Car are incredibly susceptible to counterattacks, particularly through double pushes, sometimes through knockdowns. Although normally you can clear a knockdown because whatever you're doing with your knives is going to give you momentum. In J-Car's case, often what you'll do is stab somebody. If they were going to counterattack, you'd take a double dodge away from that person so they can't touch you. You stab somebody else and double dodge back into them, and you manage to get around that pitfall with a guy who can drop a pitfall marker, oddly enough. But in Rundas' case, he does have a knockdown on 4. It's really not what you want to take, but if you have to keep him stabbing somebody, that's just great. What is nice is if you run in to stab somebody and they counterattack you and just push you out of range, and now you've got a problem because you can't stab that person anymore. Well, Rundas does have 2 character plays that he can use from range that can set up the next person for killing. He's got a Harrier marker that he can just drop for 2 influence, or he can spend 2 for a Dirty Knives to do a little bit of damage, reduce that model's defense, and give them poison. He's great in the sense that he can activate early to set people up or late to stab the crap out of them. Now, I think he's better as a late activation because there's other models on the team that are better at setup, but he has the option for both. Yeah, overall, he's even got a decent goal threat range because with a 8-inch run and a 2-inch shadow like and a 6-inch kick, that's 16 inches right there. So that's not bad. He's a 3-6 kick, and like I said, in my Hunters, J-Car is my most frequent goal scorer. I bet that Rundas is often going to be in position to score. If there's one weakness that he has, or really the whole Falconer team has, aside from Icaros, is that they've got really bad tackle stats. Rundas has a non-momentous tackle on 3, and that's just, if you have to do that, you're not really happy. But overall, he's really going to be solid for stabbing, and he's got a very high a very high potential damage output with a Harrier on the board, or with a knockdown, or the not singled out that Minerva has. What's it called? I Spy, with my little owl eye, something to kill. It'd be pretty. He's going to be able to get a lot done. It's going to be rare that I think it's a bad idea for him to have 4 influence. Like, pretty much every turn he can use that 4 influence, because like I said, even if he's in a bad position or gets knocked out of the way, he can just set somebody else up to do the hurting.
Yeah, he's got a lot that he can do, and like you said with the goal scoring, if he charges a model to get, where he's going with his run, and then his 10 dice that he's throwing down?
Yeah, 10 dice, 3 to take the ball away, which, I mean, I really don't want to do that, but he can do it.
But you could theoretically go in there, tackle. If you wrap by 1, you get a dodge, so you can dodge out. So if you're just at the edge of your engagement zone, you could dodge out and then possibly, get away with not losing the ball. But he's seems pretty solid. I mean, just looking at all the models, they have ways of spending their influence even if they don't get into the fight. For instance, Minerva here, she has the Harrier play for putting down an AoE for extra damage, and she also has the I Spy ability, which, looking at it, you go, oh, it's just another version of Singled Out. Why would you care about that? But it's also Singled Out, but it's not called that. So when she plays up into Hunters, you can have both Singled Out from regular Hearn and I Spy from Minerva, which means you get +4 dice. Now, is that a win more? I have no idea, but I know that if I have both of those things on that guy, it probably should lead to that model's death.
Yeah, giving Theron 10 dice on each swing, or Hearn 9 dice on each swing, or J-Card 10 dice on each swing, that seems like some kind of win condition. It's just like, if you set that up, you're probably going to take something out and maybe do way more than you thought possible. But in the Falconers themselves, and even in the Hunters, I think Minerva's kind of interesting. She definitely has the strongest setup potential. She is just setup supreme. She's got 2-inch melee, so she can engage things. She's got a momentous knockdown on 2. She's got momentous guild ball on 1, and that guild ball can be used either for I Spy, and she can put that on the model she hit, or she can put it on a model up to 6 inches away. Say you're going into the butchers and you really need to get extra dice on Fillet. Well, it's really hard to do anything to Fillet in the first place. You're not going to hit her well with any of your character plays or anything. But if you manage to smack somebody with Minerva's stick and trigger an I Spy, you can put that +2 dice for each attack onto Fillet and potentially threaten her, whereas normally you couldn't. That goes for anybody else. But yeah, she's got a very interesting threat with that I Spy. Also with the momentous guild ball for Harrier. So she sets up with the knockdown, she sets up with the Harrier, she sets up with the I Spy. Bad news is she's insanely fragile with a 4-1, and I think
4-0.
Or 4-0, excuse me. Yeah, 4-0 is 4-0 and 15, so she's got a little bit of meat to her, but she's going to get dropped fast. Now, if they don't have a knockdown, she's going to bop him on the head with a stick and knock him down, or potentially push him. But so she's got potentially some of the best counterattacks on the Falconers team, and she's still pretty fragile. When I see using her, it's going to be a lot like using Cosset, which might, when I initially say that probably makes no sense to anybody, because, Cosset is a hammer model that kills the crap out of anyone. Well, Minerva doesn't kill the crap out of anybody, but she sets a model up to die immediately after she activates. So your opponent gets an activation, and then on your next activation, you will delete that model. But if you extend Minerva in the same way that if you extend Cosset, she'll die. She'll just absolutely be taken off the board before you can do anything with any of your models. So that's kind of why I see her as maybe a backside protective hammer when somebody gets close to your captain Minerva rushes in, knocks them down, sets them up, and then one of the other team models on your team knocks that model, kills that model, or takes that model out is the right terminology. Usually, I think what'll end up happening is your opponent won't send a model into a place that Minerva can set them up, but hey, that's threat. That's threat in and of itself. So she's the kind of model that I think will often project more threat than she ends up doing. And often when you use her, she's going to die afterwards. So be really careful about that.
Even with her fragility of only being 4-0 with 15 hit points, when you look at her threat range of a 5'7", and a 2-inch melee, and the way her playbook is set up, she is a much tinier version of Colossus, in that she has a knockdown on 2, and then she has her guild ball on 1, so she can walk up to somebody, knock them over on the first swing, preferably, or you can do the I Spy on that model, which you're hopefully going to do anyways, and with 3 attacks, you can knock down and apply both effects, and she can stand there and provide a crowd out as well. She has nowhere near the staying power as Colossus, so she's not an activate first, but she's very similar.
She's like one of Colossus's living legs before it got amputated. Like, she is not going to stand up to much.
No, but she has this, she's got a lot going on, and when I look at that, I go, okay, if it's going into like turn 2 or 3, and your opponent isn't in the greatest position, if Minerva does end up doing that, where she's able to walk up, knock down, and apply her effects to people, do you deal with her, or do you deal with the fact that my guys are knocked down and also there's a Harrier AoE ready to eat somebody? Any of the models like Rundas or even Divana can do a lot of hurt to somebody who's in the Harrier AoE. So even if they wanted to fight Minerva and beat her up, they have to figure out that, there's actually problems here.
Yeah, in order to use Minerva effectively, just make sure that you've got your own models protecting her in some way. And I do want to go back for 1 second to talk about Minerva and Cena, or at least Minerva and the other Hunters models. And just also realize that, yes, she turns Cena on, but she turns everyone on. And it's not unlikely for Hearn-1 or J-Car to be able to do 20 damage in one activation when Minerva's around. So just remember that. And that, Cena will also do a lot of damage, but these other models that can often be used to do other things will also do nearly as much or more damage as the bear. But the bear is damn cool.
I mean, maybe it gets better in Season 4.
Maybe.
We'll see. Maybe they'll give him that ability that's just called I'm a bear and doesn't be knocked down.
Right,
I still, to this day, it's a grizzly bear. Have you seen how big a grizzly bear? How in the bloody hell is, even if some of these dudes who are playing Guild Ball are like 6'5", rugby players, how on earth are they knocking over, a 1,200-pound grizzly bear?
Right.
Good fucking luck. The bear should literally just say, cannot be knocked down.
Well, there's some flavor fails. I don't know whether or not that would actually be broken. It's something I have to think about. If the bear could not be knocked down at all, does it break the bear? I'm not sure.
In its current iteration?
In its current iteration. And I think the answer is no. I think that would just be fine. Because the easiest way to negate the bear is knocking it down. So the question is, does preventing the opponent from shutting the bear down with knockdowns, does preventing that situation break the bear, like make it too good? And I think the bear would just be fine if it couldn't be knocked down. But that's another.
He's balanced by bringing 0 influence to the team.
Oh yeah, that's
like right
wonderful.
there.
Yeah.
That's already enough of a hindrance.
Yep, your team pays to influence every turn to have the bear. But we're not in bear time. We're in falcon time.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of falcons, they have a mascot that is literally a bird.
It's a bird, not quite a falcon, but I was reading that falconry includes many types of birds of prey, often eagles. It's just the sport of using birds of prey to hunt things, which I'm not sure if it's creepy or cool. Like, I really have to think about that.
I mean, I enjoy the fact that it's a bald eagle, because this team is just screaming to have some guy paint them up as an America fuck yeah team.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because Frelsey, for anyone who doesn't know, means freedom in, I believe, the Icelandic language. Yeah. So the bald eagle's name is Freedom. I would totally love to see an America fuck yeah painted team, right. the red, white, and blue, because we can.
So, I like the simplicity of Frelsey. Frelsey is potent, but also pretty straightforward in how to use, I think. Frelsey does have one of the more accessible tackles on the team. Again, non-momentous, but Frelsey tackles on the 2. Frelsey is tack 4, so tackling on the 2 isn't the greatest, but figure often Frelsey will be charging, and it won't be that hard to hit your 2 column when you've got 8 dice. I think Frelsey flies. Frelsey has a pretty long threat range, being a 5'9", and also pretty regularly getting an extra 5 inches of movement through the captain. We haven't talked about the captain yet, but the captain has hackback for 1 influence, makes the eagle dodge 5 inches. The eagle is a great tap-in goal threat with with a kick value of 3/4, right? 3 dice, 4 inches. So if the eagle's going at goal, it's always tapping in, which is kind of nice. I guess there's like one situation where that's not true.
The eagle, if the eagle has the ball, I mean, the eagle's speed is 9 with flying, so does not give a shit about other people and terrain. So it can fly around and hold the ball. I mean, on the best ideas, Devana, who we still should need to go over, but she can make Frelsey dodge and then deliver the ball to her for free.
With some magical thing that we'll talk about at some point.
Yeah, we did this in the correct order, trust us. But, I mean, Frelsey has, 5, 9, 14, 18. She has an 18-inch goal range with, I'm not going to say a guaranteed tap-in, because it's 3 dice on 3s. I've missed those.
Right.
Because Midas is terrible.
You missed that 1 in 27. Still happens.
Yeah,
it's like 3% chance to miss.
She's probably the most accurate mascot for a goal kick, I want to say. And probably the most accessible mascot for a goal kick. I would like to say that, she's got loved creature, which means, that's pretty good. I mean, considering she's probably going to be in the fray since another model on the team has assist with her.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also the only way on the entire team you can hand out snared, which I was worried about this because their problem is they took Egret and Hearn down from the top team. Hearn's abilities are based around whether or not the opponent is snared, and if the only way to get snared out is through your bird, that's kind of a shit show. I really feel like they really dropped the ball on that guy.
Small correction on that. There are 2 other ways in Guild to get snared. One's with the captain and one's with Hearn. But Frelsey does offer a very good being able to snare with a momentous guild ball on 1. That's a great result. Frelsey is good in that Frelsey can score a goal and Frelsey can set a model up to die. Now Frelsey isn't doing much damage itself. I don't know whether it's supposed to be a boy eagle or a girl eagle, but Frelsey,
sure.
Yeah, who cares, right? Bird is bird. But Frelsey is very good at those 2 things. It can score goals and it can set things up. And sometimes your opponents will feel necessary to remove that model from the table because those are potent things to have for a mascot. So they gave Frelsey the loved creature trait so that when your opponent does decide that Frelsey needs to die, freedom doesn't always reign. So when Frelsey does go down, you get loved creature.
Puns included tonight.
Not even sure that's a pun.
So, speaking of Frelsey and who she assists, let's just go right into the captain now, where we should have started, because we're smart.
Devana Destroya.
Yeah, when I first looked at her, I was like, oh, 4/5. but maybe they figured that 6th was probably a problem. She's pretty good for her opening stat line. I mean, 1-inch melee, 5'8", 5 tack, 3-6 kick, 4-1 defense, 4-5 on influence, 16 HP. Pretty standard across the board. I mean, her playbook, not the most amazing. She's got a momentous 2 on 3, momentous tackle on 4, momentous knockdown or 3 damage on 5. With her 5 tack, you're really not getting there much.
Yeah, Divana's playbook is really diluted. And that's probably because she has lots of ways to get extra dice. But let me first say that when I look at Divana, I think that she is Steamforge's attempt at making a World of Warcraft hunter. She sends in the pet and then beats whatever the pet is engaging. Like, that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, like, she's got some character plays that have caused a lot of clamor in the community. Particularly strong is Airmail, where she just gets to give the ball. If she's in possession of the ball, for 1 influence, she can just plain give it to a friendly model within 14 inches. That's I enjoy anything that lets me advance my game and not have to roll dice. So things like that are excellent. She's also got Hackback Frelsey, which lets her make Frelsey dodge up to Frelsey's jog speed. So, and that's very useful because she's got a trait called Assist Frelsey. So if Frelsey is engaging whatever Divana is trying to attack, Divana gets a bonus dice and a bonus point of damage on each playbook result, which is really nice. She's got Undeadly Wings, which lets her move if there's a Harrier AoE on the board, she can move it to within 4 inches of its current location. And if you actually think about that, that means if an enemy model is within 7 inches of an existing Harrier AoE, Divana can move that Harrier onto her. If you think about the amount of space on the board that covers, it's bigger than an extra large pizza. That's like a 17-inch circle on the board that you could potentially cover.
Pizza.
Right? So just think about that. Next time you're getting your Papa John's or whatever shit it is that you eat, think about how far you can move the Harrier AoE and how big that is compared to the Guild Ball board. She's real good for that. Her kind of she's got crazy abilities all over the place. Like, her biggest thing of all this interaction is Death from Above, which lets her choose an enemy model that's within 6 inches of her and within a Harrier AoE, and just make an attack at that model. At the end of the attack, you have to remove the Harrier model, but it exists during the attack, so you're getting +1 damage from the Harrier AoE. And Death from Above grants you +4 attack when making that attack. So now she's tack 9 instead of tack 5. And that unlocks a lot of her playbook. So now she can, against a 4-1 model, she's hitting her momentous tackle on 4 50% of the time. Now, that's not always her best use of influence, but it's something she can do. Now, that notwithstanding, the real fun thing to do is just damage galore, because each time she does this, she's often, against models that are lower defense, she's often likely to wrap. In which case she's just getting effectively tooled up wraps on a bunch of stuff. And if Frelsey's around, it's likely that Divana is going to do 8 damage with a momentum coming out of it against a lot of targets. Not every target, but a lot of targets. So that's real strong. I don't know. What have you guys noticed with this one? Yeah. So she's not real likely to wrap on that, but against like a 3-1 or a 4-0, it's...
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, against a 4-0, she's...
That was great.
wrapping 50% of the time.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, what I said when the mic was muted, and we're going to edit that part out later. Fuck me.
Jesse's going to edit it out later.
I mean, he offered to edit this episode, so it's his job. So she can get a lot of dice with the assist from Frelsey with the engagement plus the assist, and then plus 2 damage because the hero AoE remains while the attack happens. So plus 2 damage. I mean, she can do 8. I mean, God forbid the guys on his back are just a shitty defense in regards, because that's like 10 damage, which, you know, is a shit ton when you consider that if things have already gone in that turn, she could potentially just remove the model.
Yeah, that model could be knocked down. That model could be I spied, not singled out, but I spied. That model could have dirty knives on it for -1 defense. So there's a lot of ways to really crank her up. She's a model that you want to be activating. And that model could also be snared, but either by Frelsey or Veteran Hearn. But she's a model that if you want to get damage out of her, you pretty much want to activate her last.
Yeah, she's probably going to be one of those I go last guys. It's either you're setting up the turn for either Rundas or Divana to finish the turn off, and with Divana it gives you a much farther ranged play. Rundas, there are actually more ways for your opponent to screw up a Rundas run than a Divana run, because Divana can reposition both AoEs and a model on the board. Divana presents your opponent with many options and decisions. And just like in every other game, the more decisions you give your opponent to make, the more chances they have to fuck it up.
Right.
So
for what it's worth, Divana should never activate. I shouldn't say never, but she should almost never activate very first in the turn, because if she does, she can't be using on deadly wings, so she's not doing her 6-inch crazy attack. At best, she's using a couple of her character plays. You know, maybe she's close enough to a model to slap them around a little bit in actual melee, but usually she wants to activate at the end of the round, and that's when she's really going to crank up the damage. Now, she does threaten to strip the ball with with Death from Above. In early activation, she could strip the ball with a momentous tackle with a Death from Above, and then airmail it to a friendly like the bird or the Rundas, or really any of the models on the team can score. They've all got decent kick stats and decent threat ranges, so she can do that. She does have a legendary that's really good. Now,
what is the legendary, Chris?
It's something
tell
that
us
super
what it
pisses
is.
off Dave.
Tell everybody what the legendary does.
It makes Dave cry, and it's called...
It triggers Dave.
It's called Daughter of Falcons.
It's a great name.
Yep, and it's a 6-inch pulse, and it snares everybody in that pulse, and it does 3 damage to everybody in that pulse.
So it's 3 damage after she's completed her turn and scores a goal?
Nope.
No.
Does it? Oh, it's whenever she makes a pass?
Nope.
So how does she get
It's also
3 free damage?
She manifests Thanos and goes like this.
It's also not after those models have bleed on them, like some other models in the game require.
I'm not salty at all.
Right. I've heard a lot of salt from people who compare her legendary to Midas's legendary of a conditional 4-inch snare, or Filet's legendary of a conditional 3 damage, whereas, you know, Divana gives an unconditional 6-inch snare and 3 damage.
I'm going to go ahead and say right now, Filet's ability is better than Midas's ability.
Well, also, if you attempt to jam Divana and hit many targets, she's going to die. Her defensive stats aren't great. She doesn't have good counterattack. She can't get away. She doesn't have a tough hide type ability. She doesn't have good dodges to get away. So if you manage to snare 3 models, those 3 models are going to kill her, usually. I mean, you might be playing against a shark fisherman team and they just decide to tickle you and dodge away. But normally, if you're trying to get the mileage out of her, like you're like when you jam Midas or jam Filet for their super damage, if you try that with Divana, she's just gonna fall on her face and die afterward. But you might have a very glorious turn.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that she does automatic damage and automatic snare, which means that anyone who's caught in the snare, A, has to remove it, or they're suffering a movement penalty and a defense penalty, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, people... removing snare is almost as high a priority as removing knockdown. It's like secondary only to that. So
they're going to have to spend time removing that before they even do anything. Then there's the option of, okay, they might be also out of range to do anything while snared. And also the ability might actually just finish people off. I mean,
sometimes
you might live the dream because you get people down to that magical land of a couple hit points. You just walk over and go, you're dead, and you're dead. And that happens because you can just say, I choose to do 3 damage now. And 3 damage is happens in your area of denial.
I mean, when she's really living the dream, she's between, if the Harrier AoEs are in just the right place and she gets off 3 of her Death from Above abilities, and Frelsey's engaging a model. When she's really living the dream, she might do 28 damage, just like Spigot.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and that's a lot of damage. She might do 24 damage that way. She could add 3 with a snare with her legendary, so she can really spike damage sometimes. But like I was saying, if she's close enough to snare 3 models, she's close enough for those models to smack her around, because she's got to be within 6. And there's not a lot of models that, when snared, can't still get 6 inches worth of threat. But so it's very conditional. It's unconditional good stuff. It's conditional when you should use it. So keep an eye out for when to do that and set someone up for the kill or finish them off, or just, it might be nice just to set up an end of the turn thing where you
give Hearn a hopping ground where he can just teleport from person to person and do what he wants to do.
Yeah, just let Hearn play hopscotch through the through the enemies.
I did do that once in another game against, I don't remember who, and it was fun, but at least there's more than one way. Now that I realize that there's more than one way to put out snared, I just wish there was another applicable source, because otherwise Hearn just doesn't do anything. Veteran Hearn has a little bit of a rough time as it is, but I was hoping that you would see it on like on Matagi or something. But speaking of Matagi, I think we've done everything we can do with Divana. I mean, there's a million ways to look at her, but I'd like to see her on the table. I'm just waiting for the actual box to release so I can actually... Right. I don't want to proxy everything or I'll forget what the hell everything is. Matagi is one of the guys who can play up to the Hunters. 6'9", 5 tack, 2-8 kick, 5'0", 2-4 influence, 10 hit points. When you first look at that, you go, okay, long kick stat, really fast, no hit points, sounds like a striker, real guy with no real ability to stick around. And if you were looking at that, you'd be right, because he's got a decent kick range, 17 just because.
Yeah, he's super fast and super long kick.
He's got a dodge on 1 momentous, a double dodge on 3 momentous. He's got Harrier that he can trigger for both momentous and non-momentous guild balls. And he's got Snapfire on his playbook. Snapfire being, of course, one cost, 6-inch range, target enemy suffers 1 damage. The big thing on him, I think, is his hotshot ability. And I'm just going to say right now, I think hotshot as an ability, like the idea like with him and Cinder and some of the other models where they can make attacks while not being engaged because they have bows, I really feel like they're going to give that to Egret in Season 4. I'm not saying I'm not saying this is how you make that model better, but I'm saying I would be willing to bet a hot dog that that's gonna go on her, because that seems to be the way of things. I think that wouldn't break Egret. Like, that would break Theron more than likely. but I don't think that would break Egret. I think that would make Egret useful.
That sort of thing is hard to say because that's a pretty major change to a model to add that. It seems like a lot of cases you have to design the model at first with Hotshot in mind to really get it right.
The big thing, with Hotshot is his playbook allows him to shoot a model at ranged. He can trigger his Harrier off the guild ball. So instead of rolling 2 dice to maybe get it, he can roll 5 dice at a model and see what happens.
So in my experience, when I've played Matagi in my hunters, I've given him 1 or 2 influence each turn. Usually 1. When he's in good position that he's also a goal threat, I give him 2. And the reason is, with Hotshot, he has the option of just picking on a low defense stat enemy model like, say, Boar, who's a 3-0, and triggering a momentous Harrier off the playbook or a momentous double dodge if somebody happened to engage him or something. So he can trigger lots of good momentous results off of his playbook and then potentially jog and kick a goal with the second influence. So when I play him, since he's so fragile at 5-0 and 10 hit points, I tend to run him on the far side of the field, sort of near the enemy goal, or at least sort of in threat range of the enemy goal, but also in threat range of jogging backward and plucking, pinging somebody in the back of the head and dropping a Harrier. Now,
it's almost like the term winger on his card was applicable.
Right? It's funny how sometimes they get the design so spot on. So
yeah.
Now, what's also really nice about him in Hunters is that he, with the blessing of the Sun Father, he can just drop a Harrier essentially for the cost of 1 momentum off of one of your other models. So that's real nice. Now, in this team, he gets a lot of use out of dropping Harriers because Divana craves those Harriers. Rundas really wants them to stab. Matagi himself also can jam a bit of damage, as he's got a momentous 2-on-2. And if he can just engage and start smacking somebody, which isn't always the best way to use him, but if he can start smacking somebody who's already in a Harrier AoE, that's effectively momentous 3-on-2, and that's a pretty good time. And sometimes you're just going to take a little damage, put out a little damage with him, because he's also got Crucial Artery, and so you get to make somebody bleed. So he's got lots of nice little things, and he's a model where if you give him 1 or 2 influence, it's pretty hard for the opponent to invalidate that influence.
Yeah, you really can't deny him when he wants to do something because of his threat range. His ability to walk up and fire or run and fire is pretty decent. I mean, I get why they gave him Snapfire, but it almost feels like that's like a icing on the cake. Like, oh, you left him at 1. Well, good luck, because there's no real bonus to that other than just, picking off little things. Other than he does have Crucial Artery, a lot like Egret. When I first saw him and read his card, I was like, oh, is this Egret's older brother? Because he has the ability to 1 dice supply bleed to your opponent's team, whereas she can 1 dice supply poison to the opponent's team. Now, that might not be, they might go, oh, that's not good, but when you think about it, like, if Egret goes and flurries and puts poison out, and then you put bleed out, and it's like randomly they're the second to last or third to last activations on your team, and your opponent can't do much about it, that's a decent amount of damage that they have to worry about at the end of the turn.
That's 5 damage in the upkeep phase, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah, and that's not anything to shake a stick at. I mean, even if that doesn't kill anybody.
Called upkeep in this game? No.
Yeah.
Maintenance?
Upkeep, no, maintenance phase.
Thank you.
Too many years of War Machine.
We don't want to get Steamforged games sued by using appropriated terms.
Using the wrong terms.
But yeah, I mean, 5 damage. I mean, that's a lot of damage. That's actually a decent amount of damage. Like, if they don't have any way to deal with it on the last, like, if their last 2 activations are like mascot and dude, like, or guys that don't have a lot to do with it, like, especially with their ability to do it on the first turn as they're walking up the field and people are trying to get in position. I mean, that on top of, like, say you put 5 damage on a model with 14 hit points, it puts them at 9, which is in kill range for a lot of these guys at the beginning of a turn. Like, Rundas could just charge and kill that guy.
And I would say most turns, I imagine myself using Matagi pretty early in a round, unless there's somebody better for me to activate. I think that he is a model that sets people up far better than take out, so he's usually going to be an early activation. But he has a bit that he can get done if he has to activate late, too.
Yeah, he can do a lot both early and late.
It's not like Minerva, where if you activate her early, she's just going to die.
Well, she's a bit more of a setup than others, but she can activate early. But I think Matagi's in a good place for what he can do both on Falconers and on Hunters.
Yeah, he's super great in Hunters, and I'm excited to use him in the Falconers.
Speaking of,
what things were we were excited about?
So the last model on the last model on the Falconers was that guy who had bird wings.
Yeah,
because we just called him Birdman.
I like to refer to him as Keaton.
That would have been a way better name than Icarus,
right?
If they had called him Keaton, could they have gotten sued? I doubt it.
Well, they could just spell it different, like they do everything else.
I don't know why they didn't call him. I'm gonna call him Keaton because I don't give a shit.
Right.
But
who else has wings? Keaton wore wings as Batman. Keaton wore wings as Birdman, and Keaton wore wings as the Vulture.
And that's fantastic. I mean, it's great because I love stupid shit, and that's what this model is. Guy with mechanical bird wings in the not steampunk era of this game.
Right. And he sticks out like a sore thumb, right? He's the very Victorian gentleman with the fantastical devices.
Yes,
and then he's in this
really
guild
weird.
of bird bird trainers, and with a much more hunter lifestyle.
Bird enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Bird enthusiasts, yes.
He's one of the, because the Falconers are obviously very nomadic peoples, Native American, hunter-gatherer people, and it's that's what their aesthetic is.
True.
That's what their aesthetic looks like. And Icarus doesn't fit that at all. I mean, he's very steampunk, whereas everyone else is like, we're wearing leathers, and he's like, I've got a business attire and mechanical wings.
I am a dapper gentleman.
I want to read his fluff. I imagine him as flying out to tend to the eggs or something. That would be interesting.
Definitely can fly.
Oh, yes.
Especially across the board. His speed is 5'7", his tack is 4, his kick is 4'8", 4-1 defense, 2-4 influence. You're going, okay, that's not as fast as you think it is, but he's got a great
basic
kick.
Playbook.
Pretty decent kick. I mean, 4'8". I mean, his playbook, very, 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 very bland. 1 damage, a momentous tackle on 1.
He has by far the best tackle in that guild. The momentous tackle on 1 is good.
Momentous push dodge on 2, momentous 2 on 3, momentous double dodge on 4. So he's not getting much out of that with the 4 dice. I mean, he's probably getting 1 or 2, which is what he needs. 13 hit points, so he's not going to die immediately, but he doesn't have any defensive abilities. But what you really have to look at is how everything works together on his card. When he's got his ability called Feathered Friends, while this model is inside of a friendly Harrier AoE, he gets +1 tack and cover. So he's got additional die to try to tackle the ball away, and he gets cover, which means they take away dice from him.
He also gets to use Harrier AoEs as fast ground, right?
Yes, so he has updraft. Once per turn, he may treat a friendly Harrier as fast ground. Now, you look at that and you go, okay, that just means he's got fast ground for that one thing, and that's fine. I guess he's a 5'9", a 9 sprint on a
7'9".
A 7'9" on a kick of 4'8". That's really far, but other models have done it before.
Yeah, that's 17 inches there, potentially.
That's before, though. You take into effect that his only character play, taking flight, happens. Taking flight, for 1, range of stealth once per turn. When this model may immediately make a jog and gains flying. So he ignores all models' bases, terrain, and ground. It cannot end overlapping other bases and terrain. So when he runs through a Harrier terrain, he gets +2 speed. So he can activate taking flight, jog through a Harrier AoE, gain flying, which means when he goes through that, his speed for his jog will go up to 7. Then he can run for 9 inches. That's 9 plus 7 is 16. And then his 4-8 kick means he's got a 25-inch threat range, not giving a single fuck because of the fact that he's got flying and he can just go over everything.
Now, you have to be careful with that, Dave, because flight means that you have to ignore ground and terrain. So you can't get the bonus twice. In fact, you can only get it when he's jogging or running and not flying. So if you want to get a speed boost from going through the Harrier AoE, you have to run or jog through it and then do the flight jog with taking flight. So he's that puts him at a without a Harrier on board, he's a 20-inch threat range, and with a Harrier on board, he's a 22-inch goal threat range.
He's really fast.
Yeah, he's really fast. So
he can be on the edge of the board, near the edge of the board. He can just walk down the edge and be like, I'm over here, because at any point I can just come into the middle of the board and I can score a goal.
Right. So remember earlier I talked about those things that make a good striker. It's long threat ranges, it's good defensive stats, it's viable dodges, it's ball protection. And he's kind of in the camp a little like Bonesaw. Oh, and it's also low momentous dodges. So he's definitely got that. And he's kind of in the camp near Bonesaw where he's exceptionally good at some of those things. Like momentous tackle on 1, great. 22-inch native ball threat range, amazing. No close control, no strong defensive tech, no viable dodges. But he might have enough... You might get enough mileage out of that super long threat range to make him a decent overall, like a really good striker overall. Furthermore, with the momentous tackle on 1, it's very possible that on a charge he can wrap to the first column and take that momentous tackle for the wrap portion, and then use push dodges for the other portion of his attack, so he can potentially bounce off and get away and take the ball by wrapping. But I see more often he's going to wait somewhere nowhere near the goal and wait for somebody to get the ball and dish it to him. Oh, say Devana with an airmail, like she could grab the ball with her death from above and airmail it to him, and then so long as he's within 22 inches of the goal, he stands a pretty good chance of kicking the ball in when he wants to. So I see him getting used a lot like that.
There's a lot going on with Icarus in the idea that you can airmail the ball away, because the ball could be pretty damn near the other side of the board edge, and she can use death from above, grab the ball, walk away, airmail it, and you can essentially move the ball to the other side of the field.
I do want to reiterate that her tackle isn't very good, but you can hit it with death from above. If you're not using death from above, you're probably not going to hit her tackle. Sometimes on a charge, because that's essentially equivalent. But when you can get the ball to Icaros, he's going to probably score goals.
Yeah, it seems like he's not bringing a lot of damage, but he does end up utilizing a lot of what they can do. I mean, the airmail function of the ball's going a long way, and he's probably going to not be hanging out in the center of the board.
Right.
There's no reason for him really to. So the fact that he can hang out on the other side, and her airmail being just so on a board that is 3x3, being 14 inches with her basic walk, can be really, I can get the ball at any point up there. I really think that he's going to be really strong in the bait and switch. Like, you thought Icarus was going to get a goal? Now we're going to wait till next turn.
Yeah.
Other shit's going to happen. Thanks for devoting a guy over there.
He does really have the ability to get away. If he's holding the ball, he doesn't have the strong he doesn't have the strong ball protection abilities like unpredictable movement or close control, but what he can do is move 12 to 14 inches in one activation. So it's really easy to dish the ball. Once he's got the ball, it's really easy to get him to a safe place because, well, if you're not safe in a spot that's 14 inches from where you are at the start of the round, then your opponent was probably going to beat you anyhow.
It's a little bit more of a bit of a win more, but when the rest of the team doesn't really strike and you need a striker, he does the job damn well. He's pretty damn good. I think I can see very few scenarios where you probably won't be taking him on the team just because at some point you're going to need a striker. And the big thing about him is that he hunts down the ball by himself for those teams where, like butchers or morticians or farmers, where they're going to hide the ball in the corner or behind a rock. He can go and hunt it down himself. He can give himself, if you give him 2 influence, he will go very far. And he can go find that ball and go try to take it.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, he may be useful in forcing your opponent to keep the ball on a model rather than trying to kill it off of a model. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, he's going to see a lot of play. I think he's going to be pretty damn good. I don't know if, other models, really make the other models from the Hunters really help him out. Not really. That's just more of a distraction, but Icarus, the way he works, time will tell. He might be too fragile. He might just up and die. But the fact that even after he dies, he can get back in the fight so much faster with that flight ability, because he can fly, he can take his jog, take flight, and then still walk. He goes really far.
Yeah, I think he's got enough synergy that he will be very useful in most matchups.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Falconers. As far as final thoughts on these guys, I'm really looking forward to them. I really like the Hunters. I haven't gotten to play enough of them, but I'm really happy to get them on the table more with especially these models. I think Matagi, Minerva are really going to help. Just like Chris said, they're really powerful, and I think that turns the Hunters up to a respectable number. Like you might legitimately see their numbers go up. At tournaments, their numbers have gone up a lot recently, but I think Matagi and Minerva will really help that. I think the Falconers as their own team probably won't do as well as the Hunters because of the roster size, but I still am going to have a lot of fun putting them on the table and doing cool shit because I love birds. I don't know why. I love them in fucking War Machine when they had Griffins. Circle was one of the armies I wanted to play the most with all the birds, but they sucked, so whatever. I just think they're fucking awesome, and I'm looking forward to bringing them to life. I already have a new goal token thought up for them because their other one is like whatever, but it's cool and all. But I have a better one that I want to make, utilizing models from other games and other pieces parts. So
kit bashing.
Kit bashing is the word. It's used in all the modeling games, but I think they're going to be pretty sweet. And I'm looking forward to playing them because I have them on pre-order. So whether I can get them from my local store or if they happen to show up at Origins way before.
It'd be nice, but I don't expect it to happen.
The release for the Falconers are at almost the same week as Origins, so Steamforge probably will release them there.
Is Steamforge going to be there?
Their booth will be there. As far as I can tell, their booth will be there. I am not going to get into the fact right now that they are not running any tournaments at Origins because that makes sense. However, I think that they'd be silly not to bring these models to the booth to sell.
They would indeed.
Chris, what do you think on your reflections?
So yeah, my overall take of the Falconers is essentially they're kind of super glass cannons. They've all got pretty bad defensive stats. They're pretty fragile. They are really fast. They've got high peak damage. So if you're trying to kill a model all in one go, they are going to help you do that. And they've also got really good fast kind of in the same way that they do high peak damage, they'll also do kind of high peak ball movement and scoring. So they're extremely fragile, but they can get around the board well. I think one of their biggest downfalls is they have just wretched tackle stats. In a lot of cases, it's better to just it's a lot easier for most of their models to knock someone down, or for some of their models, it's easier to knock someone down than it is to pluck a ball off of them. And that's kind of an absurd thing to think of, but you're going to have to leverage that sometimes. And as said earlier, they don't really have a good way of protecting the ball in terms of defensive abilities. All they've really got is their speed to help protect the ball. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I think that they're going to pull off some 4-1 games if they can control the ball potentially on Divana while they send some wingers up the side and pound on people in the middle as the opponent gets closer to take the ball off Divana. And then once they have a model that threatens to pluck the ball off Divana, you just airmail it to somebody else and either hold on to it out there or score. 2-2 is also totally possible with them. Like most teams in the game are built around the 2-2, and I think that's probably where most of the games with the Falconers are going to end. But it's a very, given that they don't have a lot of good ball control tools, it's a very you have to be very careful about when you're deciding to kick that first goal. Because if you kick that first goal when the opponent can turn around and get to 8 or 10 points on the snapback, then you're in a very bad situation. So, but I look forward to all the good things with these guys, and I look forward to all the interesting designs that we're going to see in the future, because Steamforge is showing that they're not running out of ideas. They've got plenty.
So on that note, we want to thank everybody for joining us today on Push or Pass. We'll be back in another week or two with some more news, hopefully a little more balanced Guild Ball to HeroClix ratio if there's some things to go over. But I get the feeling like we're going to get some more Navigators previews in the next couple weeks. So thanks for listening again. We'll catch you guys next time.